happy to be here with you and to present some of the results from my PhD thesis. I investigated some systems which should help to objectify the harm-benefit analysis. There have been a lot of proposed systems since the early 90s. And a comparison of them was very, very interesting. And if there's enough time, I will tell you something about the current work we do in Austria in the moment. In this talk, I will say something about basic things about harm-benefit analysis, a form of weighing competing interests, and the scale of as a metaphor to symbolize what we are doing there. I will say something about ethical acceptability as an essential condition for approval of an animal experiment, and then go to these catalogs of criteria. And I will make a definition on this term, because this term is not so very usual. Will say something about the demands on an appropriate catalog, because I think such a catalog is very important to have in this area. So, directive from 1986 did not meet anymore the requirements, not only in matters of scientific things, but also in matters of ethical evaluation. There was no demand for adequate ethical evaluation. So the proposal for a new directive in 2008 means it should be transparent, integrating the opinion of independent parties, and a comprehensive ethical evaluation forms the core of the project evaluation. It has to be indispensable, ethical defensible, and without alternatives. And then a proposed experiment can be authorized. But there has to be an ethical evaluation prior to a project being authorized. And you all know this in Article 38 of the directive. Harm-benefit analysis has to be done to assess whether the harm of the animals in terms of suffering, pain and distress is justified by the expected outcome, taking into account ethical considerations, and may ultimately benefit human beings, animals or the environment. I took this in different colors because for me it's very important this taking into account ethical considerations. Everybody who has followed the process of the directive knows that first in 2008 there was a great demand in ethical aspects. It was just in 2009 in May was demanded that a proposed experiment has to be ethical defensible. Yeah? But in the process later with the stakeholders, in the trialogue with the Commission, the ministers and such on, every term where there stood ethical was stricken out of the directive. And in, I think it was autumn 2009, a small phrase came into again, and this is the only part where ethical is mentioned as a wording, taking into account ethical considerations, but this is much less than a proposed animal experiment has to be ethical defensible. This is, what means this? Taking into account ethical considerations, and we have no definition what means this, what is the basis of this. And so this is the start we're going from, and we try to make this more to catch it. So in Austria there is a special situation, because there is in this term we have added another term in which the completed catalogue of criteria has to be considered. So the lawmaker want to have a catalogue of criteria, and the task of this is it should be based on scientific criteria in order to objectify the harm-benefit analysis, so that the authorities and even the researchers have a guideline on which aspects they are proved, so that you have more objectivity, more transparency, and that they know what is demanded from them. And I think this is in the EU unique in the moment for my information. I will come back to harm-benefit analysis. What is this? What means this? Is this a form of weighing competing interests? Is this something is referred to weighing of competing interests but does not meet important requirements? There was a very good discussion of Klaus-Peter Rippe, 2009, in Altex Ethics. Or does it mean a real weighing of competing interests? And the outcome of a real weighing can also be that a proposed animal experiment could be rejected because it's not ethically acceptable. And on the first side, when we take the wordings here, the harm to the animals in terms of suffering, pain and distress is justified by the expected outcome. When I do this in this metaphor of this scale, we have two scale spans, one of the benefit and the other harm in terms of suffering, pain and distress. But I see a great bias in this. I come back later on this point. What means this balancing? We have three great problems. First, we have incomparable interests. The term is incommensurability, mentioned in the discussion before. We have apples and oranges. It makes, if we have here some apples and here some apples, here 3, here 5, you know what's the outcome. But we have apples and oranges. How do we weigh this? But this is not a problem in every time's life. Nevertheless, weighing in many fields of everyday life makes this. Every court decision, when different interests stay on court, all time there are incommensurable interests, and the judge have to find a decision where the respective interest is as less as possible inflicted by the other interest. This is in everyday life, when you do research on human beings, or if you make research with stuff of human beings, or
human tissue.
Yeah, tissue. Yes, there are incommensurable interests, but they do it in everyday's life. So the second is the number of weighing of interests to be weighed. This is a very important question. Which interests do I put on my scale spans, and how many of them? And it's very easy. If you have here two aspects on the one scale span, and I have here 3 aspects here, and 4 aspects here, and I make this very strong. I make this very tough. It's not the weighing and the weighting. When I make the weighting of this aspect very great, because maybe it's the outcome of a medical experiment, when it goes on neuroscience research, Parkinson's disease, to find a therapy against Parkinson's disease. A lot of people are inflicted, so this could be a very great wide. So, but it matters. The outcome will be just different if I have on this scale span also such a great demand. So, this is the outcome depends on the number and the weight of the aspects I'm weighing. So, and this is just inside the completeness of considerations. Every judge will first make an assessment of all aspects who are relevant, and then make the weighting when it's all complete and not something is not considered. Ethical acceptability of animal experiments. I told before, it has to be indispensability for a legal aim, like basic research, like applied or medical research, or environmental things, and nowadays forensic experiments and such things. it has to be no alternative. If there is an alternative, you are not allowed to conduct an animal experiment, and it has to be ethical acceptability. The ethical acceptability has to be approved. And when this is all in the process, all accepted, then you have to apply the 3R. But in the project evaluation, they also look if the 3 R's are mentioned and transposed acceptably. This overview shows the situation in Germany, and some other member states in the EU have a similar system, like the Netherlands or Norway or such things. This is the applicant. He files a proposal. Here is the competent authority who approves, who gives the grant, who say, yeah, you can do the experiment or not. And we have an animal welfare officer. In Germany, it's so that the animal welfare officer has to make a statement. And this is a very, very good and important thing, because these persons, and now with the new EU directive, the animal welfare body has to have certain expertise inside. So, and this man, since the 80s in Germany, has to have the expertise in matters of lab animal science. He has to be ideally a veterinarian. So this person can assess the prospective severity of the procedures much more better than the most of the researchers. Because the researcher, in many cases, is a human medical doctor, or is a physiologist, or a chemistry, or a biologist. Yeah? And he makes it as good as possible, but he gives a statement on this, and this is very valuable in Germany. So then the application goes to an advisory committee, and in Germany this is mostly 6 persons. 1/3 has to be from named animal protection organizations. So we have 4 researchers and 2 persons named from animal research organizations. And I think the system is very good. I'm a member of such a commission, because here is a lot of expertise on the round table. More expertise than this person can ever have. The persons in the competent authority approved animal experiments, but he is not in the research. He is not on current conferences, has not the latest state of the art. Yeah? But these people are inside in research, and maybe there's a statistician, maybe there is a specialist in animal lab science, maybe an ethicist or so on. Yeah? So the process to make the project evaluation of proposed animal experiments within this group is, I think, the best that you can have. And they advise the competent authority, and the competent authority makes queries or invites the applicant and so on. But we have a great problem inside this, in matters of this, I'm talking now, the ethical acceptability, because all these persons, the applicant, a medical person or a natural scientist, and animal welfare officer, and these persons are well trained in natural science, but they are not specially trained in ethics. Yeah? They lack ethical expertise. We have in Germany only 2 universities where biologists have in their curriculum, in their studies, ethics in the life sciences. One of them, I make my PhD thesis. Yeah? And every other university, they make natural sciences, but they are not trained in ethical aspects. But they have the challenge, they have to make this cost-benefit analysis, taking into account ethical considerations. But what considerations? They are not trained in this. And this is a great problem. So we have the lack of expertise, but weighing of competing interests is much more than mere counting and calculating scientific data. Yeah? Ethics is a scientific discipline, a reflection theory, and not a subjective attitude, and not a gut feeling or such things. Ethics is more, it's a scientific discipline. So, in 2006, scientists of the Animal Welfare Academy in near Munich make a great investigation. I was involved in this. We made together the evaluation, and it was published in 2007 in Altex. We evaluated the members of the ethics committees and the competent authorities in Germany. And the outcome was from Kuller and Rudel, who makes the publication. The main type of advice mentioned concerned the actual ethical evaluation process, so that it can be concluded that more competence in ethics is needed within that process. And this problem is viewed many years ago. So in 1993, de Koning and Toyne, two ethicists from the Netherlands, stated, as a consequence of the current situation in this country, committees may develop varying local styles of evaluation, which makes a consistent jurisprudence impossible, which provokes shopping strategies along research labs, and which results in a lack of confidence by the public. So, if a researcher has not get the grant in one area of competence, he goes to another and files his application there, or goes in another, even in another country to get this application there. So, this shopping strategies, I find this very interesting. So, as a consequence, different systems have been developed in several countries, out of academic interest and on demand and behalf of authorities. In the Netherlands, it was on demand of the veterinarian, the highest level of the ministries in veterinary science, to develop such systems which should structure and objectify the weighing of competing interests, makes it more transparent and counteract the problem of individual subjectivity. Because when you see this picture, it depends, even here, it depends on the composition of this stuff, what would be the outcome. And if you have here a composition different to the composition of another committee, they have just different outcomes by the same proposal. And it was very interesting. Varga and colleagues, this is from Portugal, they make a very, very interesting publication just in 2012. They observed any paper which measures these processes worldwide. There was, it has to be English with abstract and such on, and with evaluations and so. And they concluded that in terms when such a committee or such a process has guidelines, and this is the fact mostly in scientific topics, when you compare them, different areas, it's nearly similar, the outcome. But where there is no guideline, and this is the fact in matters of the ethical evaluation, the outcome of different committees is totally different. This was a very interesting paper. And I think this shows the demand that for the ethical evaluation, there is a demand for a guideline to make this process much more better. So, what is a catalogue of criteria? We talked firstly on pain catalogues. So in the Appendix 8 of the EU directive, there is such a pain catalogue with the classification of the severity scales and with some examples how you can prospectively estimate and classify your proposed procedure. And the severity state goes as one aspect, and a very important aspect, into such a catalogue of criteria. But in this catalogue of criteria there are much more aspects who should be evaluated. A pioneer of this was David G. Porter in '92. He has, I show you. This was in Nature, a two pages publication, not very great, on commentary. It's in commentaries you cannot make a 10 pages publication, and this was very groundbreaking because David G. Porter was not an ethicist; he was a biomedical professor. Yeah, and he puts this into discussion, and in a paper in Nature, everybody looks at Nature. So he thought animals have been seen primarily as tools for research. The toolkits, also his toolkits, novelty is that it advocates a change in philosophy and then challenges the investigator to ensure that the proposed experiments are of a quality and exigency sufficient to justify the total demand that will be made of the animal. And there have been a lot of very positive criticism in literature about this system, and this criticism is considered in later catalogues. So that I say that there is an evolution, a process in these catalogues. If you look at them, they're getting even better and better and better. And within my PhD thesis, I investigated them, and you can categorize them into checklists and scoring systems and computer programs. And if I take first checklist, I investigated from Sharman and Teutsch checklist, the Dutch model from De Koop-Poening and Teune, and criteria of a German judge, Meisak, in the commentary of German Animal Protection Procedure Act. And I investigated not every catalogue, but because some are very similar to others. So the main focus was that they are different and they reflect our system and our ethical frame set in the society. And this Dutch model from '94 is nearly similar to the IME model from Smith and Boyd, so that I referred on this one. And to show you that you have an opinion, what means this, how does this work, I show you some slides about it. This is from the Koop-Poening and Teune. You have some categories, like here the quality of the experiment, and there are different questions about is a replacement possible, or about the reduction or the refinement. And here you have no and yes questions, and you take a pencil and you mark it, and then they say it gets to an overall qualified result. Here is okay, is good, but can be improved. And if it can be improved, it is dismissed. It goes back to the proposal filer that he has to improve it. This can be discussed if this is a qualified result. And this is part of a decision tree in this model. And this is a very interesting thing. Here's the quality of the experiment. We said it is good. So then they look at the burdens of the animals, and at the Bedeutung means the importance of the experiment. And last, on the credibility of the research group. And here in the middle, which is colored, is another to symbolize it. You know this, you have maybe seen this very often, but this table is in many times rejected from the whole decision tree, because it's only a part of the decision tree. And many systems take it and say this is the end of it. So you have here the burdens of the animals, small, middle and severe, and you have here the importance. Some other authors say the benefit or the outcome, small, middle and great. And if it's small, no burden of any animals could be justified if there is just a peanut outcome. And if it's a middle outcome, it will be rejected when it's a severe severity. And in this system, in the Dutch system, when there's a great outcome, they will they will give the ethical approval on all of this.
5 minutes.
Just 5 minutes. Oh yes. Okay, another system is Mant. She improved the scoring system from Porter, and she gives grades like in school from 1 to 5, very good and not so good, and evaluate also different aspects of the model. Another very interesting model is from Staffleux. I made it different to the publication to get this metaphor. On this side are the aspects from the experiment, and on that side are the aspects of the scale span of the animals. And they weigh here the interests, the basic aims, and in the next the relevance in terms of animal lab science and such things. And they give points from 0 to 10, and they say it has to be a minimum 7 points to have a lower threshold on quality. When it's only 5 point the quality, a bad planned and not good quality experiment will never be ethically defensible, so it is rejected. So that you have a lower threshold, and then at the end they compare if they get a number for the scale span of the experiment or the animals, and if it overrides or is similar, then it's justified. Another interesting model is from Switzerland from 2007. I show very quickly. It's about forces benefits and impaired benefits, and the scale span is here just a little bit different, because here's also the responsibility and moral integrity of the animal experimenters, and also gain in knowledge in terms of 3 R's and animal welfare. And it's like this. Basic in research, you have to make some points here. How likely is it that the experiment will result in an application? Likely. And then you go on to the impaired benefits, and I say severity 2, 20% and 80% severity 1. So there are some very interesting questions you have to fill in, and then there's an outcome. An outcome that shows the different categories, gain in knowledge or animal health, welfare, then the burdens on the animals, the use of the animals, moral integrity, has he a good of qualification and such things. And this goes into an overall score. And you see this is nearly in the red zone, because I make it very fast. And if it's in a green zone, it could be approved. This is computer-based, but the thinking beside is the same. You have a scoring, but scoring means to make as objective as possible. And the scoring means I give them grades, like in school. In everyday's life, when you are in a job and you go to another job, they give you a grade. You are very good or not so good or such things. And these questions want to make it more that you can better assess what the proposal is.
Just one minute.
One minute, yes. So, and very important is that all these catalogs. Are the aspects they evaluate, and here's the catalog Porter, the Koppuni and Toyne, and the Switzerland. You see, they nearly evaluate the same things, and this is my conclusion. I think that there should be on this balancing more aspects than just suffering, pain, and distress. You have to look at the husbandry conditions, at the complexity of the animals and the number of animals and so on. And here also on transferability probability or to achieve aim and so. So all ethical relevant criteria has to be in this weighing. And the last word, now we are in my project group, we are discussing if the complexity or the number of animals maybe has to come on the other scale span, because it's a part of a question of which animal model do I use. Yeah, it's a part of the 3 R's to take the animal model who comprises the less suffering and such things. So, thank you very much for your attention.